think another round of applause for the Advanced Jazz Band would be appropriate. That was awesome. Good morning. So I hope all of you are well as we close in on family weekend, a change of pace, a day off on Monday, and a chance to gear up for the second half of the fall awaiting us on the other side of this break. The stretch from our first day of classes to Thanksgiving is always busy and full, and this year's start has felt especially busy and full to me. So as I get started today, I'm mindful of how we have spent time in chapel of late, the courage and trust in this community that Mrs. H. and Mr. Jones shared last week marked two more moments of many in my life here that have left me proud to be at Brooks. We were all the beneficiaries of their courage and trust and belief that what they had to share mattered to us. It did. It does. And that feels really good to me. I'm still thinking through Justice Broderick's extraordinary talk on Monday about the importance of raising mental health awareness and the opportunity and responsibility our school has to do better and better work in this area. And frankly, with all of this in mind, I find myself feeling there is not much I can share today that will measure up to the standard Mrs. H., Mr. Jones, and Justice Broderick set over the past 10 days or so. While I can't add to what they shared, I am continuing to draw from their talks and am grateful to be able to do so. So where to go with this talk in the immediate aftermath of hearing from impressive and brave colleagues and guests, I've wondered. Well, not where I landed ultimately. It is always a good move to reflect on the splendor of our 270-acre campus at this mid-October point, with fall in full bloom all around us. While I am in no way objective, there is not a more magnificent boarding school campus anywhere, and this is especially true in the fall. Just look around on a clear, crisp fall day that isn't too hot, isn't too cold, with everything around us appearing to be in a high-definition television picture. We've just had a few days fitting this description, and it looks like Saturday will be another. We attend school together on a campus that itself will inspire you if you give it a chance, and I hope you will. I thought about reflecting on an exchange I had with Mr. Chapman at the beginning of the year when he suggested to me that my true religion was the New England Patriots. Somewhat jokingly, I think, but not entirely. His suggestion has led me to think a lot about the Patriots and what really is at the core of my arguably irrational interest in them year after year. There's more to this angle than you might think, maybe another time. I've thought about faith and religion and spirituality and whether there might be some way for me to share some thoughts about being a non-practicing Catholic, whatever that means, with a lot of reservation and frustration about the church I was raised in. The truth, however, is that I think you'd find such a talk to be incoherent and a bit bland. It's hard to be clear about something that remains perpetually unresolved in one's mind, and that is Catholicism for me. If I figure out where I am in this area at some point, I'll try at another time. So with family weekend just about upon us, and all of these options not feeling right to me at the moment, I'd like to give some thought to family and a feeling that has felt like a prominent thread through what Mrs. H., Mr. Jones, and Justice Broderick shared with us. And that feeling is unconditional love. I can't and would never try to speak for any of them on the subject, but I can say that I felt and was inspired by the power and importance of what I would call unconditional love in their lives. I'm not wild about bits and pieces a quick online search might reveal in an effort to define unconditional love. Affections without any limitations doesn't really do it for me. The type of love which has no bounds and is unchanging is better, but still not quite there. Love that is shared without regard for what may or may not come back works on some level, but those are my words, in trying to capture something that is much more about a feeling than it is about how some number of us might define it. I think trying to define unconditional love won't get us very far. Trying to ensure that we all have it in our lives strikes me as an endeavor well worth taking on. As I've found my way to thinking about unconditional love over the past week or so, I've thought a lot about the incredible gift it is. If we step back and think about loving and being loved unconditionally through thick and thin, it is an extraordinary thought, and it's brought a lot to mind for me. It's led to some thought about those in my life that I feel unconditional love for, and has nudged me to assess how I'm doing at conveying that love. It's led to some thought about those from whom I have felt unconditional love in my life, and some wondering, maybe even doubt, about how well I have reciprocated over time. It has led me to lament the thought that there are many in the world who have perhaps not felt unconditional love in their lives, and the additional weight one must carry through life without feeling and knowing it in your own way. Of the many privileges I have and enjoy in my life, being loved unconditionally is among the most precious. I would be a shell of myself without it. So instead of trying to define unconditional love in some textbook fashion, I'd like to try to illustrate it for you, at least what it is to me, with my family at the heart of my thinking. I've thought about the moment in my life, right on this campus, when I first saw my wife giving a talk to Brooks School students about healthcare reform on November 11th, 1994. We are approaching the 25th anniversary of that moment. It might sound corny, or whatever word you use as a synonym for corny. But my unconditional love for her started as soon as I set eyes on her in the now replaced Brooks School auditorium. I remember every detail about seeing her for the first time and thinking by the end of my first day knowing her, I am going to marry that woman. She is the eighth wonder of the world to me, and her unconditional love has carried me through my life, truly. I've thought about the two moments in time when our children, Kate and Elizabeth, and I'm sorry to embarrass you for a moment, Elizabeth, were born 2:03 p.m. on August 28, 2000, and 12:22 p.m. on July 26, 2003. As the parent who is trying hard to be a supportive spectator on these two occasions, it has never felt right to me that I was the first person other than a nurse to hold them. Mrs. Packard deserved that privilege. But I will say that holding them just a minute or so into their lives produced a combination of emotions I can't really explain, other than to say, I knew there and then and beyond a shadow of doubt that I would love the two of them unconditionally for the rest of my life. You talk about a moment where use of the word awesome is appropriate. How empty my life would be without them and their love. I have thought about my parents, which fits with Family Weekend now being upon us. As far as I can recall, I have never shared too much about my mother or father in chapel through the years. They are now into their 53rd year of marriage and have been and remain pillars in my life. Well, there have been times when I did not make it all that easy for them, I assure you. I have felt their unconditional love for my entire life. When I think about the fact that not once in my life, not for a single moment, have I wondered about my parents' deep, abiding, and unconditional love for me, I get a bit choked up, as you can tell. What a gift that is. For me, trying my hand at parenting, failing all the time, and trying again, has deepened my appreciation for my own parents and the love they continue to share with me so generously. My mother will be 78 1 week from Saturday, and my father turned 89 this past May. I have wondered whether I have done enough for them. Have I earned the gift of their unconditional love? I've thought about my brother. I have just one. He's 26 months younger than I am. And if I ever find my way to a talk about the Patriots as my religion, he will figure prominently in that talk. We share season tickets, now in our 26th year doing that, and are at a point in our lives when the 5 or 6 games we go to together each year represent the lion's share of the time we spend together, and really about the only time that we spend together alone. He has an incredible work ethic, is an incredible husband and father to his wife and 3 children, and I know every second of every day that he would do anything he could to help me at any moment in my life. His unconditional love is of a different sort, but it means more to me than I suspect I have adequately conveyed to this point in my life. Another thought for the to-do list. And while this might sound a bit odd to those of you who are not dog owners, the unconditional love I have felt from the 2 dogs we have owned in my adult life, whether they were and are conscious of sharing it or not, has been sustaining in ways that I cannot describe. I know they are dogs and not people. But, without fail, Lincoln wags his tail every time he sees me. No other living being is as happy to see me as he is every single time. There's a great line in the movie Marley and Me near the end where Luke Wilson's character says about Marley, his dog, after having to put him down, and I quote, "A dog doesn't care if you're rich or poor, educated or illiterate, clever or dull. Give him your heart, and he will give you his," end quote. Maybe it makes me a bit shallow, I don't know. But I believe we can learn a lot from dogs about unconditional love. They have it mastered. To be honest, I'm not totally sure how I want to try to land this talk, but I suppose these points stand out in my mind. First, it seems to me the more each of us works in the direction of loving unconditionally, the better off our families and communities and world will be. A simple concept, perhaps, but maybe not so simple to realize as often as we would like, looking around the world at times. It seems clear to me, however, that when unconditional love endures, we and others find ways to being better versions of ourselves. And that is a worthy pursuit. Second, I don't know that selfishness is actually the opposite of unconditional love, but I certainly think that selfishness gets in the way of loving unconditionally. I appreciate the push and inspiration I've felt in this space recently to do all I can to make certain that those I love unconditionally know and feel that love. An absence of selfishness feels like an important part of the equation. And finally, I believe what we have experienced in chapel recently are examples of our school at its best. We all play a role in making those moments in our year possible by living together in ways that inspire some among us to have the courage to share with others confident in this community's care and support and kindness and love. That's no small thing. And asking ourselves routinely how we are doing at nurturing this strength of our school is time well spent. I hope your family weekend allows some time for rest, some time for renewal, and time in close proximity to unconditional love that sustains you. I look forward to all we will experience together over the second half of the fall. Thank you.